Hey everyone, and welcome to Quickscope Podcast, brought to you by Higher Passion Entertainment. I'm your host, Eric Quiros, and we got a special guest on today, straight from the Heroes and Mutants Podcast. We got Nick. Nick himself,
What's going on,
most likely
everybody?
to be a superhero out of all of us.
You're not giving yourself enough credit, man. Come on.
No, for reals, we have a lot of fun on the Heroes and Mutants Podcast. We're happy to have you here. I want to see if you can
Thanks, man.
just talk a little bit about yourself, and specifically with gaming. What kind of games do you like?
Obviously, just because of everything we do on here, has to be anything related towards the superhero genre. But as a millennial, with just games left and right, no matter what, no matter how many people say, "Oh, gaming is for kids, gaming is for nerds." Everybody played games when they were a kid. So obviously, we grew up in the era of Super Nintendo and then N64. And I had an older brother who was 5 years older than me. So obviously, anything Nintendo, the original Nintendo, and not anything Sega Genesis. Everything we, and then once PlayStation came out, that all everybody had that too. So then my brother, my high school, everybody played Halo. We played that, but around that time too is when video games for superheroes started getting a little bit better. Probably Spider-Man 2 was the best from when we were kids.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny when we think on that because the superhero movies, a lot of them had video game
Yep.
tie-ins. If you think of like Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is actually a lot better than the movie. Like that was like something that was so weird to me. So anything related towards that, obviously, because superhero thing is my go-to. And as I've gotten older, Arkham
Oh, for
games,
sure.
Injustice, so anything related towards that. But obviously, too, I love sports and grew up an athlete, so sport games were my go-to. Assassin's Creed, anything like action, adventure, sport games were anything that I played and right up my alley.
All right, that's awesome. That's awesome. I since we're on the topic of superheroes, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite superhero video game of all time?
Definitely got to be Arkham
Arkham
City,
City?
man.
Yeah, I think you guys
Definitely.
posted on the Heroes and Mutants podcast, right? They just did their 10 year, is it? 10-year anniversary?
10 years on October
Yeah,
18th.
it's
Yeah.
crazy that it's already been 10 years since that game came out. Um I mean, it's a great game, and obviously it set a standard for superhero video games, and not only the like actual gameplay of it, but just the storytelling and
Mhm.
seeing Batman as an actual like detective and him working through the entire plot of that game, which is like beautifully crafted, right?
Yeah. Well, especially because we had said like from the most popular superhero games were movie tie-ins. So Spider-Man 2 was that, but that this was like set in a whole separate continuity and was its own thing and had a lot of inspiration and paying homage to the comics. Well, Paul Dini, longtime Batman the animated series writer, and then obviously creator of Harley Quinn. He actually wrote the script with Sefton Hill for Rocksteady. So that I think that was more so what stood out to me was, and that actually made me start gravitating more toward these comics because there was a lot of stuff that they talked about and that they implied that were direct connections to the comics or were paying respect to that. So I think it was something in its entirety. That fact it was based off an original storyline of Batman and comics in general. That was super cool to see, and it covered all those different aspects on what makes Batman Batman, or when you play a Batman game, this is what you would expect.
Oh
So
yeah, definitely what you expect. Yeah, so it's really awesome. But before we get into DC Fandom, which is the topic of this podcast, I did want to talk on some just recent news. Obviously we just mentioned Arkham City. Its 10 year. One thing I really wanted to talk about. You mentioned playing a few sports games in the past. This is big news coming out of EA Sports and FIFA. Basically we're just in the middle of a messy divorce over here. It sounds
very
like, I
messy.
mean, FIFA has even said like official statements that they weren't happy with EA Sports, and they've officially pulled their name. So the next FIFA game might not be made by EA Sports, and now EA Sports needs to go and basically rename their franchise. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think, right? You mentioned, how long has FIFA been the name of that game?
Boy, it's been like what, 8
maybe
years, 9 years,
yeah,
something like
maybe
that. I think like 2012,
it has to
2011,
be a
something like that
decade.
was when they.
I mean,
Yeah,
we've talked.
because when I started playing them was 2013. I think was it Chicharito was on the
Oh
cover.
yeah,
I definitely remember playing that.
yeah. It's crazy because I know FIFA has set so many standards in gaming.
Mhm.
And like we've talked about in the past, how the whole loot system, loot boxes, and everything, FIFA did that, and FIFA did it beautifully. And FIFA is still like the standard for sports games in generals. They they just
Yeah,
do
definitely.
they do really well. And the the
That's why this whole revelation came out as
yep.
they just didn't feel that EA was marketing right.
I don't know. I feel like the problem is EA. I mean, just recently, a few episodes ago, we were talking about how um, EA lost their rights to all the Star Wars games.
Oh, dude,
So
that's
they
right.
lost rights to the Star Wars games, um, and now they're gonna lose right to the name of FIFA. I think FIFA just wants to be associated in a different way with a different company at this point. Um, there has been, even though FIFA's still one of the biggest games right now, there's still a lot of people that have stopped buying the FIFA games just because they've kind of been cut and paste. Like it's a cookie cutter formula. It's the same game every year. This
So it was like what Arkham Origins, what people were complaining about Arkham Origins compared to City.
oh yeah, yep, definitely. Uh, so I think the thing here is just people got kind of sick of the same thing being done over and over again. And then FIFA wants to start fresh with a new developer, maybe not new developer, maybe just new publishing, right? But I know there's gonna be confusion when the game comes, the new FIFA comes out, because it's not gonna be EA Sports. So I personally, I think that the 2K is in the running for it, right? Like it makes perfect sense. If I were FIFA, it makes perfect sense to go to a sports game competitor and let them use the FIFA name. It kind of has a nice ring to it, right? Like FIFA 2K23.
I actually think it does, to be
Yeah,
honest.
so
Rather than just FIFA 2K, especially because of everything that 2K has been really good on that end
yeah, I
with
mean
their with the basketball games
they
and
do masterfully with the NBA games, right? NBA
yeah.
2K. And I
Well, hell, I mean they put NBA Live out of business.
yeah, right. So I think 2K is in the running, probably at the top to take the FIFA name, and of course they're gonna dish out a lot of money to be able
Mhm.
to use that. But
Yeah.
people look at that; it's a brand thing, right? People are gonna look at it and say automatically, "Oh, there's the new FIFA game. I'm gonna purchase it." I don't know what EA Sports is gonna call their game. Soccer simulator. I don't know.
Football, football
Football.
forever, football forever.
Football forever. I don't know, man.
Which is and that's gonna be weird too, and it's just gonna be like a piss measuring contest with that whole EA Sports is gonna have their own football game, but then FIFA is gonna have a new developer, so that's gonna be like a whole kind of weird thing, and it's probably gonna turn into a case of what NBA Live and 2K were.
Yeah. Yeah, people are definitely gonna get confused. I fully expect people to be confused when the new game comes out. Um, but from what it looks like now, it doesn't look like there's any bridge that can be made to get them back together, EA Sports and FIFA. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see
that
where
would
that goes. But
seem shot.
overall, it's just interesting to watch, because I've never thought that I would see FIFA be removed from EA. So
Yeah,
we'll see. Hopefully 2K will pick it up just because they've done so well. Um,
yeah, seems like that's probably the best option for them, or the probably the easiest path for
yep,
them to
yeah,
go.
definitely. In other news, we actually got a new trailer today for Uncharted. So for the movie. So historically, video game movies have not done too well. Uh, I'll admit, because I have a toddler at home, I've watched the Sonic movie way too much, and the Sonic movie is
Mhm.
actually pretty well made. I actually kind of liked it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
the new trailer for Uncharted came out today, and I actually think it's gonna do well. And I mean, Tom Holland's in the role, right? As Drake, as Nathan Drake. It's really cool to see him in that role. As I was watching the trailer, I saw Mark Wahlberg, who was pretty. It's pretty funny. Mark Wahlberg was rumored to be Drake before, and now.
I remember that, and it did make sense because he was like around that right age frame, or maybe like you could say he was like 40, even though he's 10 years older. But he kind of like more that look for what I was expecting out of a Nathan Drake or a live action depiction of Nathan
Yeah,
Drake.
yeah, and I mean, I thought Mark Wahlberg would be fine for it too. I think Chris Pratt was in the running as well, just John Krasinski, but they ended up with Tom Holland, and they're gonna do a prequel. It's basically a prequel to the games, which I think
Oh yeah,
it's
because obviously he's really young.
yeah, I think it's really smart to do it this way. I'm really hoping they do well, just because again, the history of video game movies isn't too good. I mean, we just had that Mortal Kombat movie, which is okay. Uh, you're pulling your
Yeah.
face there. Did you not like the Mortal Kombat movie?
You know, I was a big fan of Mortal Kombat, and I think when it was first announced, I was really hyped for it. And they got actors who could perform the movements. You know, Ludi Lin as Liu Kang. He was somebody who has that physique, and he can also perform a lot of his movements. Kung Lao was actually Max Zhang. He was a former member of the
Yeah,
Jackie Chan stunt team. Was long running Shaolin Wushu practitioner. Just seeing his movements, and so it looked like to me they were really just trying to get actors who could perform the movements, as opposed to having to get actors and then train them. And I just felt like it just messed up. It just tried to change so much about the lore and the mythology with the arcanas, and it kind of, but also too, it started making me wonder too, is this really something that this franchise was it meant to be based off or have like a movie adaptation? Just because it's such a straightforward story,
yeah,
it's hard to really do that and make it the way that it captures the essence of the game. So it made me more just kind of questioning: is it really possible to do an actual live action version of Mortal Kombat?
yeah. I don't know. So I think kind of going back to Uncharted, I was kind of thinking along the same lines. I mean, Uncharted, yes, it has a good storyline. It's kind of a, I mean, the gameplay it's a gun game, third person, and you kind of work through the different environments. So I
Mm.
just didn't know how that would translate.
Yeah,
Thankfully, Uncharted does have really good storylines in place, like all the way
yeah.
through.
Well, I think it's definitely built up for more of a movie adaptation than something like Mortal
Yeah, but
Kombat.
I thought the same thing about Assassin's Creed. I'm like, at first I was like, oh, really good
Yeah.
storylines. It's gonna do great as a movie. And I remember watching. I went
Same.
to the theater. I watched it with Eddie, and it was just like, oh man, this isn't. This is kind of boring at some points.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that was another, yeah, especially because me too. I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan, and just I'm like, I had so much hype for it. It was like, hey, this action looks great. This looks awesome, and they're
yeah,
changing things a little bit, but it still feels like it's gonna fit within the realm or the essence, the spirit of what Assassin's Creed was. And
yeah.
then I'm like, I
And then you
don't.
had Michael Fassbender in
Yeah,
the lead
I
role.
could have done without this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was optimistic about that. Kind of let me down. So with Uncharted, I'm gonna double down. I'm gonna be optimistic about this one too, just from this trailer.
Mhm.
I think Tom Holland does a
Yeah.
good job as a really young Nathan Drake. It's still kind of hard for me to unsee him as Peter Parker. Uh,
I mean, I think he even does like a
I
spider
know,
pose at
right?
some point in the trailer, doesn't he? Or he does like that.
But I think Mark Wahlberg as Sully is it's kind of weird to see, just because Sully's kind of like the father figure in the video games, and he's really a mentor. But I think,
Yeah, and you typically don't see Mark Wahlberg in
yeah,
those kind
but
of
I think
roles,
he
but
can pull it off. He's a good actor, so
yeah,
and they might even go a different direction with Sully's character. But from the
yeah, definitely.
from the trailer, it definitely looks like he's that mentor type role for Nathan Drake, and
Mhm.
they even mentioned
Yeah,
his brother like so early on in the trailer, which was like a big reveal within in the games. And
yeah,
I think what got me the most excited for this movie is they included the like cargo airplane scene from, I think it was Uncharted 3. And
yeah. I
yeah, I
remember
mean that's
that.
an like iconic moment in the game, in the whole franchise. It's probably one of the
Right.
more iconic moments, unless you count the like the train scene as well. Um But yeah, as an iconic moment, I think that cargo scene was really important to have in the trailer because it's going to get fans really involved. Is going to get fans of the video games to really look at that scene and be like, okay, I think they're doing right by Uncharted. Kind of, yeah, some of the
Definitely.
stuff that we missed from Assassin's Creed or from Mortal Kombat, some of these other movies, was like actual scenes from the video games that we wanted to see reenacted in live action.
Mhm.
So seeing that cargo scene, I think it shows us as gamers that they're trying to stay true to the original vision of the games. And I think
Right. Right.
that's what I took from it, and that's what I really liked about
Definitely.
the trailer.
And I'm just hoping that this sets a new standard for what the MCU was to superhero films and start that whole freaking behemoth. Because it'd be cool to, and I think it's a little bit different. It's gonna be there's gonna be, as far as pop culture goes, it's gonna be more at the
Yeah.
top and have more awareness and more people pay attention to it than comics. So I think they also lucked out in that sense. So hopefully, I'm hoping that this sets a new standard for video game movies and gives companies more of that faith and that hope that if they can be done right and that there's an audience for it, as long as it's done the right way with kind of like the same kind of feelings and like the same kind of direction that they had with these super movies, with just care and distinction and trying to make something within the same spirit, and you don't have to make it
Yeah.
completely faithful, but as long as it captures that same spirit, you're paying homage and having a lot of appreciation. Because obviously if you're just trying to do like you bowl, then you might as well just not make shit at
Exactly.
all.
Exactly. Uh, but yeah, so I'm really excited about that one, and we'll see where it goes from here. Um, uh,
Definitely.
another there's another game that I actually would love to see a live action for. It would be a God
What
of
game is
War.
that?
I mean,
Who would be your ideal
have you
Kratos?
seen the there's been like a meme going around of having what's his name from Parks and Rec, Nick Offerman as Kratos. Just because there's this picture of him, he was like had a shaved head and he had a full beard,
Uh-huh.
and a fan like made him into Kratos, and it actually looked really legit as like the
Wow.
older Kratos, like the Kratos that we're getting in God
Yeah.
of War
Let's
games
just
now, where he's like a father figure, and he's still
yeah.
imposing, and obviously he's like built, but having Nick Offerman as it, there's this whole thing online where people really want Nick Offerman to be the Kratos
Mm.
for a God of War live action.
And that's funny too, because my earliest memories of Nick Offerman were from George Lopez, where he played the weird
Oh, yeah.
boyfriend to George Lopez, to
Yeah.
George's mom,
Yep.
Benny. So it was kind of weird seeing him Parks and Rec and seeing him in other stuff, and I'm like, wait, this guy, wow, this guy's a good actor. And so to see him doing a role like that would be cool, just because I feel like it would be a challenge for him. Just put on a little bit of muscle.
He
I
could
think he
probably do.
could do it. I
Yeah.
think he'd be a great
He's already
Kratos.
known as like a manly man now because of his role in Parks and Rec.
I'm
Yeah.
sponsored.
So yeah, I think that would be a good one. But I want
I totally never thought of
I
that.
actually wanted to mention God of War because it's one of the most latest Sony games that be put onto PC. So it was just announced that God of War, I think it was 2018, the 2018 game, the new God of
Mhm.
War with all the Greek mythology, or sorry,
Yeah.
Norse
Norse
mythology.
mythology, right?
So it
This,
moved away from Greek
yeah.
mythology. It restarted completely different storyline, but now with Norse mythology. So you got like Thor and everyone in there. It looks. I mean, that game
Thor,
was amazing.
Asgard, and Odin.
That game was amazing. I know a lot of people that don't own a PlayStation that only play on PC, and now they're gonna be able to play that game as well. I mean, God of War, the whole franchise has won so many awards throughout their existence. The fact that this game is now on PC is a big deal. It's gonna be
Yeah,
still at
definitely.
$50, so that's kind of pricey for a game that's 2 years old. But
Right.
even
Yeah,
then,
exactly.
the game can be played in 4K, and I don't even know how many frames per second, but it's just ridiculous. Like you can play on a 4K monitor, and it's been revamped to be able to play at that resolution. and it's going to be on Steam, which is, I mean, most people have the Steam library, and especially with the handheld Steam device that's coming out in the next few months, that's going to be a really cool game for a lot of people to have on a handheld device that they can play moving
Yeah.
forward. So that was some really big news, and I think Sony's trending in that direction. Sony has done super
Yeah.
well with their own franchise games. Like, of course, you have God of War, you have the Horizon series, and all these other games, the Spider-Man games that have come out. So if little by little they start uh, allowing these games to be on PC, I think they're gonna get a whole new fan base out of it, and it's gonna be really
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. Because like I said, I do know people that specifically play on PC. So trying to talk, and I'm
Yeah.
somebody who just does console. I don't do PC at all. I've never done it, never understood it for the life of me. But I would be trying to talk, and even like this is so much when
Oh yeah.
Arkham Knight came out. Because I had friends, like I would tell, oh yeah, Arkham Knight was cool. The story was a little bit shoddy, but the gameplay was amazing. And I'd be like, oh, I only play PC, and Arkham Knight is trash on
Yeah.
PC. Remember that was a whole thing where everyone was so pissed off on it because it just didn't mesh right, and they didn't update it right, and there was all these bugs, and people were just so pissed off, and it was just like such a heavy distinction between how it was on console between PCs. So to hear that they're really trying their hardest to make it make it inclusive for that and have a different kind of experience. Well, the same kind of experience, but for PC, I think that's a cool thing, and that's showing from a branding perspective. That's like showing that you're willing to put in the time and put in that extra effort to have the best possible product or have like that same kind
Yeah.
of experience
Yeah.
for it.
Definitely. So yeah. So it's that's exciting. So hopefully we have more friends that play those games so we can talk about it. Um, Lastly, the last bit of news that I want to talk about, and there's been a lot of back and forth on this online, and it has to do with Nintendo. So Nintendo Switch, what's it called? Nintendo Switch Online was the service that you would purchase to be able to play games online. Like if you want to play Super Smash Brothers
Yeah.
against your friends online, you had to have this service. It was $20 a year. There's now the Nintendo Switch Online expansion, which will include Sega Genesis games and Nintendo 64 games. And when I first heard about this, I thought it was amazing. I was like, this is perfect. I love these games. Obviously, I have a son, so like I can share these games with him. Like there's all the Mario games, Mario Tennis, Mario 64. You have Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah. Oh, that's got to even be
Yeah,
one of my favorite
yeah.
games of
I
all
remember
time.
you were telling me like
Jesus.
some of these games, the N64 and Sega Genesis games, they're the games that you grew up playing, right? Yeah, so
Exactly.
when I heard about it, I was like, "Oh, this is really cool. I wonder how much this expansion is going to cost." And they came out with the price, and it's $50, and that includes the $20 in it, right? So it's $50 a year to be able to play these games. The original uh, Nintendo Switch Online, the $20 one already had Nintendo and Super Nintendo games on it. So now you want to add N64 and
Yeah.
Genesis games, it's an extra $30 a year. So I don't know. A lot of people online are saying that's a really steep price per year. Personally, I think it's okay. I don't know. What were you thinking?
Yeah. Honestly, I would say if it was something where you're paying $50 a month, I think it would be easy to justify it just because that fact, or for people to do it because this is something
Yeah.
from your childhood. Nostalgia is going to tell you, hey, don't you want to reminisce on the good old days of the '90s and when things were cool or when you had no care and no worries back then? And just playing those kind of games, like those are the kind of games. I mean, you look at that, and even though obviously the standard for gaming has changed so much, and there's been so much evolution and so much progress with that, you're
Yeah.
always going to go back to those because those that's just what you remember playing. That's what you grew up with. So I even think with that you could probably justify it, but a year, I'm like that, and people are still complaining. I don't. I think that's
Yeah.
easily justifiable. I'd just look at like a year, like you should sign me up
Yeah,
right away.
I don't know, man. I just don't get it. So the Nintendo expansion pack is $50. Just $50 for the year. People pay like maybe $30, $30 to $50 a year to PlayStation to play just to play online for PS Plus, and they get like two or three free games a
Mm,
month. And I mean I pay
exactly.
that, right? I pay that so I can be able to play online.
Yeah.
Xbox, obviously Xbox has their Game Pass, which is like on another level. and I think the Game Pass, it's like $5 to $10 a month. So again, but that's like hundreds of games that you have at your disposal. But
of course. With that alone, you're paying
yeah,
$60, and that's actually more than that one-time fee that you would have for
yep,
this expansion pack, or even just your streaming services. Everybody has a bunch of streaming services now. You're each paying what, like 10, $14
yeah,
for each streaming service.
yeah.
But yeah,
So here's
I
the thing:
don't.
it's not a one-time fee; it's a yearly thing, right? But I mean, you pay,
Well, I
yeah,
don't mean
yeah,
one
one
time
time a
fee. I
year,
mean like one time a
and
year.
the family version of it, I think you have to pay like $80 for the year. But what I'm trying to say is, people pay $50 just to be able to play online, and paying this to be able to play all these N64 games, Sega Genesis games, which are like created some of the like standards of gaming, like Mario 64. Like all these games are definitely worth that price. And I know people are just saying like they're getting money hungry and this and that, but I mean, especially now with the new generation of consoles, with those games being upwards of $70 a game, you're literally paying less for all these games that you know you're going to enjoy. There's a nostalgia factor to it, and
Yeah,
it's games, especially for like a family, it's a no-brainer, right? You're gonna get
yeah,
the expansion pack because you want to share those games with your family, and even maybe with just
of
your friends,
course.
right? Like, I'd be down to play Mario Tennis again with some homies. Like, yeah,
Mario Kart,
Mario Kart's
Mario
in there.
Party, destroy
Yeah,
some friendships, hurt some
I don't know,
feelings.
man. I think people are just arguing online just for the sake of arguing,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, because for me, like I said, that's very easily justifiable, especially if it's just one time a
Yeah.
year that you would have to do it, and people pay a lot more than that, and like you said, just alone for like PlayStation Network
Yeah.
and then Xbox Live and all the other stuff. So I don't understand why that all that isn't an
Yeah,
issue,
I
but
mean, you
this
mentioned the
is.
streaming services. I think I just paid like
Yeah,
$70 for
like
Disney Plus for the year. And I'm pretty sure if I get this expansion pack, I'm going to spend more time playing the expansion pack than I'm going to spend watching Disney Plus. So,
exactly. And not only that too, but then you can introduce your son like, hey, Mijo, these are games that I grew up
exactly.
playing, or this is back in my day. You can
Yep,
become that kind of
gonna be that one. Back in my day, the good old days. Uh,
dad. It wasn't as good back in my day. So it wasn't as it's a lot better
yeah.
back in my day,
I
son.
mean, the one game that was not on here that I was kind of upset was Goldeneye 007. So,
Yeah,
but
that.
that's
Oh
because
man,
there's a whole like thing to that. Like they have to get like work with the movie rights again and to be able. So,
exactly.
um,
That
still the fact that I saw Banjo Kazooie on that list, and Banjo Kazooie, Microsoft owns Banjo Kazooie now, so obviously they struck some kind of deal to be able to allow that to be in the expansion pack. But
gives the
yeah,
people
but
what they
even
want,
then,
man.
I mean, it's something that I think is still worth looking into. But people have created enough noise where I don't know, Nintendo might make it cheaper, or their hand might be forced to include more stuff in the expansion pack besides just these games.
Yeah,
So we'll see where that goes. But for now, I think it's a easy decision to purchase that.
very easy. And I'm not even somebody who owns a Wii, and now
Get a
I'm
Switch.
definitely gonna be looking into it, or gonna be
Yeah,
definitely shopping around for
yeah.
it.
Another thing about that is you can actually buy the new Sega Genesis and Nintendo 64 controllers to be able to play with the expansion pack. You can only purchase them if you have the expansion pack. You have to do it through their online store. And they actually look really interesting. They look exactly like their old
Yeah,
controls, like the N64 one, but it has a couple additional buttons on the back, obviously because you have more buttons now in general. Uh, but it looks really cool, and that's an additional $50 each controller. And you can still use the actual Switch itself and the
yeah,
remotes
of
that come
course,
with it. But if you want that like full nostalgic old school feel, you can buy the weird 3-prong controller. I always thought that was a weird design. I always did for the N64.
definitely
Hey,
was a
but
weird
it works for a
design,
lot of
but
people, so
I mean, it was unique. Can't deny
it was
that.
definitely unique. Um, so yeah, that kind of wraps it up for all the major news that I want to talk about. Now we're really gonna get into the meat of this podcast, and that's DC Fandome. I want to
Mm.
get your thoughts, not just on the games at DC Fandome, just overall. What do you think about DC Fandome?
I think it was good overall, bro,
Yeah,
and especially because from a branding perspective, it's just really good because you're making it all inclusive for the fans, and that they can have these crazy experiences and get a behind the scenes look. They get to see concept art, get to see new projects that are in development. They get to Q&As from some stars, and you get to see very passionate individuals like Jason Momoa and The Rock, Matt Reeves talking about all the good stuff that's going on. So I think just from that perspective, it's cool because it gives that fan, it makes that fan feel like they're included in the whole all of the
yeah,
DC projects, and makes it just from brand perspective, I think it's just very good. Because like I said, Disney, Marvel, they're not doing something like this. So to have like all day panel where they're showing all of their upcoming projects, I think it's really good.
yeah. I think it was great too. Like I had a lot of fun watching it. And obviously when it comes to gaming, there's a lot of stuff there for us to consume.
Mhm.
I
Definitely.
I really enjoyed. Well, we can get into the games a bit. So out of the two games, or there's just two games really that were shown. All right, Arkham Knights and
Well, there was another one, but it was like a puzzle solve. DC, is
oh
it
yeah,
Heroes
that's
and
right, that's
Villains?
right. It's one of those
Yeah,
ones that are like mobile games that people don't touch. But
yeah. I just thought it was interesting. That was definitely something to highlight, bring up, because obviously a lot of
yeah,
people didn't know about it.
um, but yeah, out of the two games, there's Arkham Knights and then there's a Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, and both of those games they look amazing. Just in my opinion, they look really good. Um, I think a lot of people are still confused about Arkham Knights. It's not it's not made
Very,
by
yeah.
Rocksteady.
Gotham Knights, Gotham Knights, Gotham
Gotham
Knights.
Knights, yeah. It's not
Yeah,
made by Rocksteady, so it doesn't have anything to do with the Arkham
mhm,
series. That's why I said that.
yeah,
Um, and I but the gameplay very much looks like it, like specifically Batgirl, right? So the game itself, you're looking at four different characters, one of them being Batgirl, and I think Batgirl's like whole gameplay, like how she like the game mechanics and how she plays and how she fights very much feels like the Arkham games.
yeah.
But the other three, so you got Robin, Nightwing, and Red Hood. They are, yeah, you got Nightwing right there. They all play very differently, and I think that's so cool to see, right? Like and it'll make it really easy to play that game and have a main, right? Like I'm assuming if you played the game, you'll probably just main Nightwing, and then you can play.
I mean, I like them all, but I
Yeah,
mean, he's gonna be probably about it's 80% of me playing the game.
yeah.
It's definitely gonna be Nightwing.
I think I mean it has a lot of really cool stuff, and we saw a lot of it at DC Fandom. How it's
Yeah,
really focusing on the multiplayer aspect of it. Like you're actually fighting
yeah,
as a group, and you go into these games and you have like the different combos that you can do together, and it's a very different game from the Arkham games, and I think
definitely,
people really need to kind of start looking at it differently. um
definitely.
However, WB Games did do some of the like expansions DLC for the Arkham games, so they've worked with these types of characters before. They've worked within this universe before, so I think they're gonna do good with the plot. I think they're gonna do,
Mm.
and that's where my worry kind of was when I found out that it wasn't Rocksteady that was doing this game. I was like, and right off the bat when they first said that this game was coming out, the like initial trailer shows that Batman's dead, and I was like, oh man, what are they gonna do with this plot? Like I
Exactly.
have no idea where it's going. Do you know if it's actually taking anything from the comic books?
Well, obviously, because the main plot and what it looks like is going to kick it into motion, or what the synopsis is going to be, is the Court of Owls.
Yes, yeah.
Is the Court
Court
of
of
Owls
Owls
and
is
the
the main
Talons.
villain.
So
Yep.
as far as that, like it seemed like because the initial trailer they didn't show any of that till the very end, where you had seen like the Court of Owls and you saw the Talons. So I just thought it was going to be about the villains and the Batman Rogues
Yeah.
gallery. I thought it was about like the now its power is up for grab because the Bat's no longer here, and obviously they don't fear the Bat family as much as they do Batman. So I assumed it was just going to be about that, but then with this current trailer, like this was all focused on the Court of Owls and the Talons. So it seems like it's gonna be about that. Like maybe it's gonna be about them trying to establish order because now they know Batman's not around, but then uncovering a deeper plot about the Court of
Yeah,
Owls.
and I mean, we've seen the Court Owls before in on
Mhm.
screen. Like I watched the Gotham series, and I think they did a really cool job with the Court of Owls. It's really uh as an antagonist to Batman, it was really cool to see. So I'm just wondering how they interact with the Bat family overall. Like it's gonna be, I
Yeah,
think it's gonna be a really cool story. I think they're gonna go into it a
yeah,
lot. I
mhm.
think it's gonna be mainly focused on gameplay, unfortunately. Just because with the
Yeah,
Arkham series, you had so much focus on really figuring out what's going on, more detective work, and like they had the whole sequences where you had to like go in the room and take pictures and figure out what was going on in that room, and I that was kind of one of the things that stood out to me from the Arkham games. So I feel like we might have a little less of that here, but I mean, still with
yeah,
Nightwing, with Robin, and Batgirl, like they're still very capable of doing that type of stuff. So we'll see how
yeah.
the story mode unfolds. And the reason I'm very cautious about this game is because I saw what happened to the Marvel's Avengers game. And it was kind of the same thing where they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna build this story. Every character is gonna play differently," but they just went like completely like in another direction when it came to items and like itemizing your characters and how the stories played out in that sense, and it got very cookie cutter. um like all the missions just kind of felt like pretty much the same, just on a different map. So and they just
Yeah,
started getting kind of boring. So that's what I don't want to happen to Gotham Knights. I want them to make sure they're really following a really good storyline, and then at the same time, there has to be some sort of like DLC over time, just because it is marketed as a multiplayer game, right? There needs to be like new
yeah,
missions that come up once in a while that you can play through, and even like new villain DLC over time. So I'm really, yeah,
yeah. Which
I'm
it
really
should.
hoping they learn from the mistakes of Marvel's Avengers, and they figure out what they're doing here, because I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot at stake, especially when we're not going to see any more Arkham games in the near future. We really want this like these the WB games and these DC games to do well. Um,
Yeah. And I think for me too, that's just what kind of had me a little bit skeptical going forward, just because it was WB Montreal. Obviously, they're known their connection to the Arkham games was Arkham Origins, which that was probably on the lower list of games in order of ranking
yeah,
of the best to the worst. Even though I don't think it's bad, but it's not one of my favorite. I think I was a little bit more critical of it when I was younger. I think I do enjoy it a little bit more. And you can even say the story is actually better than Arkham Knight. But and that was a weird thing because when the first trailer was released at Fandom last year, it built it up or was setting the stage like it was going to be a continuation of the Arkhamverse, because obviously after Arkham Knight, Bruce is presumed dead, and then he's calling upon the Bat
yep,
family to take care of Gotham. So I was like, okay, cool, this is going to be a sequel, a spin-off to the Arkham games. And then it's like, no, it's not. The Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League
yep,
is going to be connected to the Arkhamverse. We're like, wait, what the heck? Like,
yeah,
so I think that was the only thing for me, and I wasn't the biggest fan of RPGs, but looking at it, and it's going to be about the Core of Owls, which is probably my favorite of the newer
oh yeah,
storylines from the last 10 years, and it looks like it's going to be also incorporating those kind of horror elements, and it's going to be scary, and there's going to be that sense of dread when you face off against the Core, and it's going to be rich universe with Gotham and the Batman Rogues galleries. I think it's at least the setting is going to be good. I think I'm a little skeptical. I'm just going to be a little bit cautious with it, but I do feel like it's going to
yeah,
be good.
yeah. I think especially for fans, they're gonna give the fanfare, right? Even if the game is not that good, like super fans of the comics, of even just Batman in general, they're gonna be at least okay with it. So that's kind of
Mhm.
what I'm backing, like backing down too, because again, I just don't want the same thing to happen to them that happened to Marvel's Avengers. I really have
Exactly.
high
Yeah.
hopes
No,
for it.
nobody wants that.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. What do you think about those trailers and what they're showing so far for that game?
Well, that is it's gonna be pretty good. I do think it's gonna be interesting with the plot and them with the whole Justice League and them being under not Metallo, Brainiac's control.
Yeah.
So there's still not exactly a whole lot we know about the exact plot or how that comes into play, but I think they're obviously called, Task Force X already. The only issue I had was just because we knew that there was a different version of Deadshot that we had seen in like the Arkhamverse, because he was in Arkham City, then he was in
Yeah.
Assault on Arkham, where he was obviously more in line with his comic book counterpart, and then King Shark dies in Arkham Assault on Arkham. So it's like the timeline too. I'm wondering when is this exactly supposed to take place. This is a lot of questions because they said it was connected to the Arkhamverse and it's developed by
Yeah.
Rocksteady. So I'm wondering if it was just because of that, because Rocksteady was developing it. So they had said, okay, we're going to connect it to the Arkhamverse because of that reason.
Yeah. I'm also wondering how much they're gonna take from like the most recent Suicide Squad movie. Just because
You're
it did
right.
so well. It was such a good adaptation of the Suicide Squad, and especially with King Shark, and like it was all like really funny. It was really good movie, and now they're kind of translating that to Suicide Squad, the game versus the Justice League, and it's like, I mean, just looking at Harley Quinn for example, you're not seeing the Harley Quinn from the animated series or the comics. You're seeing the Harley Quinn from the movies. That's the Harley Quinn that they're showing there. So obviously you already have that, the movies affecting the game in that way. So and historically that hasn't gone well for video games. If you look at the most recent Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, like it's really bad how they just try to take all the Marvel characters from the movies and put them in the game. They removed the X-Men from Marvel vs. Capcom, and just because they're just trying to go like MCU, and it just doesn't work. And I really hope that the games just stay more true to the comics than to the movies. Even though Suicide Squad was a
Right.
really good movie, even though they did super well, I
Mhm.
just really hope they stay true to the comics, because that's what the Arkham series did. It stayed true to the
Right.
comics, to who Batman was, who the Joker is, and all that. So I really hope they kind of uh they stick to the formula that they had been doing with the Arkham games and really develop a plot around that. What are your hopes for it?
I think because I mean we didn't. I want to see gameplay actually. Like I right now probably about an 8. I do feel it's gonna be good. Obviously, Rocksteady has a good track record and they've done amazing things with the Arkhamverse. So I feel it is gonna be good. The story seems compelling and it seems pretty cool. The whole kill the Justice League, like when that was first announced, I was like, I even was like, okay, Suicide Squad. Oh damn, kill the Justice League. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's and then that scene where Superman is obviously under control and he he burns someone to death, one of the soldiers, like that really just takes the stakes of that game higher. So you're wondering like how the heck is the Suicide Squad going to be able to defeat the Justice League? It's not just Superman, Flash, Green Lantern. I don't know if they showed Aquaman or Wonder Woman, but I feel like it's going to be good. I just want to see at least some gameplay trailer
Yeah.
and actually in-depth footage on what the gaming experience is going to be like, and then I'll go ahead and rate it like the 9 or 10 from
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
How about you?
I think we don't have enough information yet to
Mhm.
know what to expect from it. We're just kind of basing off
Right.
of it, off of what Rocksteady has done in the past, and and
Exactly.
and what we know of the Suicide Squad. Even for like, there's gonna be casual gamers that stumble upon this game that the only thing they know about Suicide Squad is the two movies that came out, and that's it.
Exactly.
And I mean that's a lot less than we had for like Batman. When you get into the, like when you first play like I'm gonna go all the way back to Arkham Asylum. When you first play that game, you could be a casual fan of Batman, and you really like fell in love with this game just because there's a full storyline, and of course it was based off of one of the
Mm.
comics, and it had a really good adaptation of it. But even then, like, you might have only known Batman from a couple movies and the animated series, but that was more than enough for that game. But for Suicide Squad, we
Exactly.
don't have it. We don't see as much of Suicide Squad as we do of Batman. And obviously
Definitely.
there's obvious reasons for that. But for Suicide Squad, like all we really know about them is the two movies that have come out, and maybe if you watch the show, like if you watch the Harley Quinn show, you might know a little bit more about Harley. Um, but even then, I don't think people really fully understand Task Force X and what they do and who they are. So
Exactly. Well, I think it's gonna be cool because it's gonna be pretty much like a version of Ultimate Alliance or like X-Men Legends, but just
yeah,
with the Suicide Squad. Which I'm wondering too, is it just gonna play out like that, where you'll just be able to switch and at any time, or if you're playing online with friends, you're
yeah.
just gonna be
I
able to
mean,
switch, or is that just the way it's gonna work, or we haven't? I think it is probably smart from that perspective too. They're building up that anticipation and there's a lot of mystery known about it, so maybe they're waiting for the right time for that. But it also feels a little bit weird because it's supposed to be released. Did they release? Did they give an official release date?
I don't think. I think it just said coming soon.
I know Gotham Knights is supposed to come sometime next year, so I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's got to be next year.
Yeah, I mean, but if we haven't seen any gameplay by now, it's kind of weird. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
probably push it out like
Yeah,
further, like
because
mid next year, maybe even holiday
yeah,
next year.
because I think with Gotham Knights they showed some gameplay right away when the along with the first
Yep.
trailer from DC Fandom last
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah, they did.
And then we didn't get anything like that for even up until this point with Kill the Justice League. So I feel like they're building anticipation, and hopefully it's gonna pay off and not be one of those things like with Arkham Knight where there was all that anticipation with the Arkham Knight. I don't know. It's not Red Hood. It's the solely original kid just for this game. And then when you found out it was Jason Todd, it was all turned out to be right in the end, and it was just a very underwhelming experience. So I hope that doesn't happen here. I don't think it will, but that was Rocksteady too, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that could
So
be something on the horizon with that.
we'll see. I'm kind of thinking that it's gonna go along the lines of being a single player game. Just because that's what Rocksteady has done in the past, and we're already
Mm,
getting Gotham Knights, which has been
yeah,
uh marketed as a multiplayer game. So
yeah.
I
Which yeah, because I think yeah, that seems to be more their track record too. Like I think one of the things I kind of got disappointed in was that there wasn't a multiplayer option for Arkham Knight. Because obviously they said, oh, you're going to be able to
yep.
interact and be Batman and Nightwing are going to be able to fight, Batman and Robin, Batman and Batman. No, just because Batman doesn't fight with Red Hood or Batgirl. But that would have been cool to just like be you and your like you and me. Hey, bro, let's hop on. You be Batman, I be Nightwing. You be Red Hood, I be Batman. Like that would.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Um yeah, so that's all I really want to talk about. Or actually, I want to talk about one more thing from DC Fandom. Technically, it wasn't a new game, but there's the Injustice trailer, which is based off the video games. What do you think about the Injustice trailer? I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. Well, it actually came out already, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was just announcing that it was out. The animated
Yeah.
movie is out.
I honestly, because when Injustice came out, that was at a little bit of a time where I think I was just we weren't expecting it,
Yeah.
and it was pretty cool, especially because NetherRealm Studios obviously developed the game Mortal Kombat,
Yeah.
so it just was one of those things like I was like, hey, this is pretty cool, but it also goes in line with that whole Batman versus Superman trope that's very popular in pop
Yeah.
culture. So I actually it was really cool to see that it was following more along the comics. You got a lot of those snippets and a lot of parts from the trailer that were actually not in the game, but were from the
Yeah.
comics. So I thought that was pretty cool. You could definitely see that there was a lot of caution and care to replicate what it was in the comics. So I do feel it's gonna be good from what I've
Yeah.
seen so far. And it's just one of those classic tales on what would Superman truly be capable of, or what would he be willing to do if his morals and the reservation was turned off.
Yeah. Yeah. I was super excited about it, and but I thought it was really cool that they did that interview. I didn't know that some of the creators from the video games actually helped uh with the animated movie. And
Yeah,
I
which
thought,
makes sense because
yeah,
you can tell there's a lot of from like the games and the comics that were very reminiscent of each
yeah,
other.
I thought it was really cool because they're staying true for to the original source, right? And they're bringing people that actually like helped build out that story, and then who also like they consulted on and for the comic series. So I mean,
Yeah,
it's awesome that they're staying true to it. So I'm expecting the same gritty, dark feel from the movie
yeah,
as I felt and saw in the games. So
yeah,
I'm really excited about it. I haven't watched it yet. Again, I'm pretty sure that one's out already, but I definitely need to add that to my list to watch it soon.
yeah. Definitely, definitely.
All right, so that concludes what we wanted to talk about for DC fandom. The last thing we do on this podcast, Nick, we usually end with a recommendation for the week. So, any game you want to recommend for the week? I'll go ahead and go first. So,
Go for it.
recommendation for this week. If you haven't played Arkham City, go and play Arkham City. I think it's on Game Pass now. So if you have Xbox Game
It
Pass,
should be.
check it out. I know it's super cheap on PlayStation. Because of the anniversary, usually there's specials around it, so so people can play. If you haven't played that game, that's the game that really made Gotham feel like its own character, and just Arkham City is one of the greatest games. Like it's one of the few games that I've played all the way through more than once, single player game, that I've
Hmm.
completed 100%. Like all the Riddler challenges and everything. Like
As annoying as they were.
yep, yeah, I beat that game 100%, and I had so much fun doing it. So yeah, definitely that's my recommendation for the week.
Yeah. I think the cool thing too was that was the first game that it had different characters in it. You could be because you could also they also had the Robin
Yeah.
pack, they had the Catwoman pack, they have differing fighting styles that are fitting of the characters and their personas. So that part was cool too. And like I said, there's just not enough I could say about how truly amazing that game is. But for me, I my friend actually let me borrow Spider-Man Miles Morales for PS5. I haven't even fully played the first Spider-Man, but that's pretty cool. I
Yep.
feel like a lot of the combat was really inspired by the Arkham games. So you can definitely see a lot of that inspiration from the Arkham games in this game. And I think it's really redefining who Spider-Man is and also not particularly it's with the same thing kind of inspired by its own original's tale pulled from the comics, some inspiration, homage. So I would definitely recommend Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's a fun time, and to just be able to swing through New York is obviously always going to be a fun
Oh, yep,
experience.
definitely. All right, so want to thank everyone for joining us. Special thanks to Nick for joining us from the Heroes and Mutants podcast. Check out Heroes and
Thanks for
Mutants
having me, man.
podcast too. Make sure to go follow them on Instagram. Follow their YouTube channel. We post awesome podcasts on there too. We just did a recent one on DC Fandome. You want to know everything else that happened at DC Fandome? Go on YouTube. They have their newest one posted there. So just
Definitely.
want to thank everyone for joining us. We got a pretty good number today. We had some people in the chat too. So thanks everyone for joining us, and GG's.
Thank you guys. Appreciate being here, man. Thank you for having me. I have to come back and do
Yeah,
it
for
again.
sure, Nick. All right. See ya.
Thanks.